What's going on, guys? It's breaking down the bees. Bellator 264. Got a UFC card on the Saturday, but kind of a dicey looking card. Not sure what direction best to go. Bellator usually a lot more straightforward, and what we're about to get into is a lot more straightforward. Sure, the lines have been steamed at this point. You got a couple favorites you would have liked to have gotten a much better price on, but there's a clear narrative of there. It's not just a random assortment of fighters they owe fights to. It's there's an A side and a B side, and so we've probably a little bit easier to figure out what B side is going to come through and pull off that upset, which guys to maybe put lower down on the ticket and not include. But traditionally, Bellator has been good for us. So let's see if we can knock out another one here. Starting off the card, again, not a great line, but we've got Charlie Campbell, minus 375 on some lines. You can get him as low as minus 335 on others, depending on where your bookmaker's at. Taking on Nick Giulietti. It's like plus again, you can get him at plus 290. Maybe you can get him at plus 225. Regardless, he's the B-side attraction here. This one, I don't really necessarily agree with the price tag. So you've got an over 3-1 favorite in Charlie Campbell. Well, what do we like about Charlie Campbell? He's one of these Sarah Longo guys. I mean, his striking's pretty good. Trains with Ray Longo, obviously. The ground side of things, we haven't quite seen as much out of him. But surely when you're in a room with Aljamain Sterling, surely when you're in a room with Merab Dvalishvili, on the lower end, Matt Frivola, working out with these guys on a day-to-day basis, BJJ coach Matt Serra, you're going to be getting a lot better on the ground. So if he is making strides in that part of his game and is able to stuff a lot of these takedowns, he's going to be a problem for guys because he's got a very unusual style in which it's almost completely predicated on the leg kick. I mean, leg kick, stance orthodox. And I don't know if he just doesn't have any nerves in his shin or if he's just got like an unbelievably strong ability and will to sustain damage, but he just keeps kicking it repeatedly. He doesn't mind throwing this thing out 40, 50, 60 times over the course of a fight, and it does start to add up. So what you'll notice as an amateur, he's undefeated 5-0. As a pro, wins a split decision in his first fight, right? Doesn't look great, we don't think. Loses a decision to Anthony Newton in that second fight. And then Bellator signs the guy. He's not expected to do much. He's coming in as an underdog against Nanoya Dung. He's a plus 255 underdog, in fact, to Dung. On the basis of he's 1-1 as a pro, that one win being a split decision. And Dung's out of American Kickboxing Academy. Dung's supposed to be a pretty solid striker. And Dung is the A-side prospect. What we see with Charlie Campbell is that leg kick will add up. Whereas all of his other fights as a pro have gone to the judges' scorecards. They've gone the distance. Those leg kicks, man, that's what's the ability to stop people is you just slow them down. And Dung, his lead leg, just absolutely gets cooked to pieces. And by the second round, he can't stand on it. He topples over multiple times. Finally, the ref has mercy and calls the thing off. So, again, impressive performance from Charlie Campbell. The next outing against this Cedric Gunnison for CFFC, it's more of the same, And Gunnison's able to survive a decision, but as the lead leg gets chopped up, he gets dropped hard at the end of the first round. He gets stung pretty good at the end of the second round, and then is eventually able to survive that third. So again, you see a decision, but this kid's rapidly putting, he's putting different elements to his game, putting different parts to his game, refining himself out, and he could potentially be good. Where I don't really agree with this over 3-1 price tag on him is that he's still only 3-1, and we have to look back to that key loss to Anthony Newton. Again, this fight's less than 2 years ago, but in the fight with Newton just goes out there and gets those takedowns. 2 easy takedowns in the first, 1 harder to get takedown in the second, and then Newton completely gasses out. Charlie Campbell has a much better third round, but what's it matter? At this point, he's already down 2 rounds, and as such, ends up losing the decision. The fact that he had that inability to deal with a wrestler, even a low-ish level wrestler, would at least give Nick Giulietti a chance to win this fight. I mean, he's not spectacular by no means, but the kid did wrestle at the Anderson University and then probably more importantly at American International College, which is a D2 wrestling program. He had some limited success there, but wrestling is his base. He also stands as a southpaw, and what he does a really good job is using the 2 biggest southpaw moves, which is the straight left and the kick to the body, the left kick to the body. When you're fighting a lot of orthodox guys, which he will be doing here, you can use those 2 weapons and then effectively shoot under it, which is exactly what he does. When he wrestled, his lead stance was that southpaw stance. That's what he feels more comfortable shooting off of. And he's got a pretty good ability to shoot both reactionary takedowns as well as throw 1 or 2 punches at a time and then shoot under those strikes into the grappling exchanges. When you talk about one guy's a 5-0 amateur, I mean, he was a 4-1 amateur, really not all that bad. As a professional, starts off with 2 victories. And then, again, fights for the CFFC promotion and unfortunately comes up on the other side of it. But when you look at that fight with Ferraris Golden Jr., Ferraris Golden is a mountain of a man, first of all, extremely well put together, like thick, strong, physical dude. And Giulietti has some good success in that fight. In the first round, he manages to take him down. He takes his back. He searches for the rear naked choke, flattens him out. unleashes a little bit of ground and pound, and the ref is like, no, back of the head, back of the head. I told you no, back of the head. That was back of the head. Stands them up. He got beat up a little bit at the end of that first round, but you can still argue that he won the first round. Second round, he goes out there, and again, I mean, he's getting his ass kicked. He's tired, but he completes the takedown, has a little bit of success with it. The third round, he's tired, but he fights through the whole way. So I guess where I'm trying to give him a little more respect here is that his prior 2 fights are both first-round finishes, right? 2 minutes into the first, 38 seconds into the first. Ferrara's Golden Jr. extended him over the course of 15 minutes, so he went the distance for the first time. That's going to be a good building experience. His wrestling didn't look too bad. He's a guy that wrestled as a D2 in a D2 program, so he's going to have that in his back pocket. And then last but not least, that fight's like 5 weeks ago. Like, it's not even 2 months ago. So on one hand, like, did he take damage and did he go back to the gym and all that? But on the other hand, as far as cardio is concerned, just went 15 minutes. That's going to be huge for your system. That's a huge, not only learning experience, but just valuable physically, right? So if he comes out here and he's able to sustain his wrestling for maybe 2 rounds, we've seen wrestling cost Charlie Campbell in the past, although his get-up game's not bad, and it was almost 2 years ago. I'm sure he's been improving. I don't want to. I think we got to go with Charlie Campbell as the play. It's just as a 3-1 favorite, we should have a lot of faith. We should move him up the ticket. And this is the one where the apple pie shit could happen right on that first fight, which is if he gives up those takedowns, it could be a little bit dicier than we would like. I got this thing more than likely going the decision. Again, he should be able to have that striking advantage. But what we've seen with Nick is that he's durable enough. He's tough enough to take some of the damage. And with Charlie Campbell, even though, the leg kicks are there, and he did score 2 knockdowns in his last fight, he is kind of maybe a little bit more of a decision guy. So if your book offers props, maybe this one goes the distance, the over 2.5. And if you have a certain lean on either side, probably that guy by decision. But again, I don't want to completely write off the underdog in this first fight. Moving on, we got Johnny Soto versus Adil Benjilany. The line is Johnny Soto -135, and Adil comeback is like +110. So in Johnny Soto, what you have is another one of these guys that wasn't initially the Bellator A side. He was brought in to lose, but he proved himself, and now Bellator is willing to run with that. With Charlie Campbell, he comes in to lose to Nainoya Dung, and when he beat Dung, it was also like, oh shit, kid actually proved something. Johnny Soto is the same way. As far as his regional scene career goes, there just wasn't enough to go off of. Undefeated as an amateur. That's a repetitive theme that you're going to see a lot of these guys. But loses his pro debut by TKO due to a body shot. And then wins a 1-15. Guys, 1-15, right? Next win is 0-0. Next win is 0-2. He's a can crusher. Hasn't shown us anything. We don't know nothing about him. And this Weber Almeida is legit. He's a 6-time Brazilian karate champion. He's a Machida karate black belt. Striking looks solid. He's training at American Top Team. He's undefeated. He looks like he's going to be a serious problem. And a lot of the guys in the training room talk about how the fact that not just a karate guy, striking has come a long way as well. They also, almost everybody that he had worked with that's on record, were noticeably all saying the same thing as like how unbelievably strong this guy is for the weight class. So Bellator's looking to run with the hype. Clearly, we've seen that a few times. And you got a comeback spot on Johnny Soto at +380. The Weber Almeida was, I think, -650 favorite over him. So nothing's supposed to happen here. The first round, nothing actually really does happen. Weber Almeida's controlling the distance. Soto's not able to get anything going with his grappling, and he's almost desperate with the grappling. He can strike a little bit. He likes to throw the knees from the clinch or from Muay Thai clinch, like the plum. But he's really just trying to get an outside trip. He's really just trying to get double underhooks on you, grind you up against the cage, pull you off the cage, and get on top. And when he's not able to do that against Weber Almeida, even though nothing really happens, everybody's kind of in agreement that Weber Almeida wins the first round. The second round, though, Soto's not going anywhere, man. And as soon as he gets a hold of him and peels him to the ground, he completely rearranges him, dominates him, searches for the rear naked choke, floats to mount, big-time ground and pound, flattens him out, big-time ground and pound again, like has a world of success over him. And then in the third round, it's like Weber Almeida's not even all that tired, but Soto waits maybe 2.5 minutes into the round, lets it go by, scores that takedown again. Good ring IQ off him. Cardio was pretty solid. Once the fight did hit the ground, this guy is pretty solid on the ground. Wrestling left a little to be desired, but he scored 2 key takedowns exactly when he needed, and striking's not his forte per se. But as far as a huge underdog cash goes, it was solid. But beyond that, he showed a legitimate skill set as well. With Adil, it's not that he doesn't have a legitimate skill set. He's a solid striker. Not only that, he's been training at Extreme Couture for this camp, and he spends a lot of time with his fellow Moroccan strikers, Abu Azetar and Otman Azetar. and as well as Ali Abdelaziz, right? They kind of got the Moroccan connection going over there. He's well taken care of. There's just not enough. Again, there's not enough that we can go on from that spot. What this is going to play down to is a stylistical clash, right? Do you like the grappler? Do you like the striker? Because Adil is a much better striker. I mean, again, coming from Morocco, they're a country that's rich in kickboxing history. Badr Hari probably being the best example of a high-level guy to come out of the country. But his striking is actually pretty solid. They call him the Golden Boy for a reason. And he has a couple spectacular KO victories on his record. Probably most notable, that Daniel Carey fight from 2018, late 2018 for Bellator. Head kick, very solid, hurts him multiple times, looks pretty fluid in there. Perfect, great. We know he can strike. Unfortunately, this is an MMA match. Can you do the other things? And that's where I think he ran into trouble. After he won that fight, he took on Chris Lencioni, Sunshine, a good grappler out of Portland, Oregon. And even though he briefly ended up on top, Lencioni, he never saw the triangle coming. He didn't look like he was, adapt on the ground and kind of a fish out of water, and he gets submitted in the triangle choke. The next fight versus Kevin Croom, sorry. This was the most telling as far as I'm concerned, because Kevin Croom can't strike at all, right? Like, his game is 100% dictated on he needs to just crash that pocket, get a hold of you, and pull you to the ground. If he gets you to the ground, he's a decent grappler, but he's not the strongest guy going, and he's certainly not the biggest guy going. Even though he's got 5 times the professional experience of a guy like Johnny Soto, they do actually fight a similar type game. In the Kevin Croom fight, it's a split decision win for Croom, but he is striker versus grappler. He loses the striking exchanges, and when he's eventually able to get a hold of him and get him to the ground, he wins those grappling exchanges. He wins a 29-28. Sorry, he wins a split decision out of it. But Croom gets the win and eventually would go on to the UFC. And with Adil, he loses and didn't do anything after that. So I know he's been at Extreme Couture. I know that he's training. I know that he's trying to get the best that he can. But we can only really base this right now off what we know. And what we know is he struggles mightily on the ground. He's about to take on a guy in Soto who just fought a good striker out of a good camp, a solid guy with lots of credentials. And he showed heart, grit, determination, good cardio, decent ring IQ, and the kryptonite, the grappling, which should work again here as well. So this is one of the closer line fights on the card. I do agree with that. And again, I don't think I'd go heavy on it. It's Bellator. Both guys are pretty young. And, one guy sprung one big upset. Are we overvaluing him now? But I actually liked what I saw out of that fight, out of that one big upset from Soto. And for that reason, I would go bank with him one more time. Dayana Avsaragova versus Gabriella Gulfin. This one's not competitive at all. The line's pretty much going to suggest that. You've got Avsaragova like 9-1 on most books. She's a 9-1 favorite, and again, pretty much deservedly so. Gabriella Gulfin, huge underdog. Again, this goes back to deservedly so. At some point, we're going to be able to fade this Russian and maybe get a decent price out of it. Yeah, Bellator has a tendency to do this. They'll get an undefeated Russian fighter, female all the times, and they're very pretty, and they believe them to be pretty marketable, and they'll match them up with these softball matchups, and they'll win a few and maybe squeak by a few, but eventually there's that moment where they're going to be exposed. But credit to Bellator. They're able to find a lot of these low-level fighters to build you up. They do the same thing every time they take on, like, Heather Hardy or anybody who's a big signing who really probably shouldn't be here. It's like those first 2, maybe 3 fights, they'll be able to find somebody. And then beyond that is when you get exposed. So fair enough. She makes her Bellator debut already, and she took on Tara Graf. Now, I'll admit, Tara Graf came out of there 100%, like bat on fire, very aggressive, just stormed towards her, and like, bad idea. They both throw the exact same punch at the exact same time, only on one side. Dayana actually slipped hers, landed the right-hand flush, and just completely knocked out Tara Graf. For a women's MMA fight, you don't usually see knockouts like that. It was a pretty spectacular knockout. And then, of course, she's got a first-round submission, and she's got a decision victory. So she's definitely well-rounding her game. She's got heavy punching power. It seems like striking is where she's most comfortable. But when you come from these Sambo backgrounds, you can kind of do it all. You can wrestle a little bit. You can grapple a little bit. And she's shown that already. Cardio doesn't seem like it's a huge issue, although a good level opponent grinding on you and pushing you and setting the tempo and the pace, that might be able to tire her. It's just we're not getting that so far. Gabriella Gulfin just does not look the part whatsoever. 29 years old, G-Daddy could theoretically be getting better, but yeah, it's it really is tough to watch. The 2 pro fights that she had for Ring of Combat against Brittany Giano and Whitney Piles. Again, you've got an 0-0 opponent and an 0-2 opponent. She defeats them one by armbar, one by decision. This Erin Blanchfield fight. Blanchfield's legit. It's for CFFC. But my God, did she look lost in there. Like, her striking is not good at all. She seems like almost a bit timid. Doesn't particularly like to engage, get hit, And as soon as she gets backed up by Blanchfield and gets her back up against the cage, it's easy work to a takedown, easy move to side control, easy to trap the arm, easy to now crucify her and attack. You don't really see Americanas very often anymore. At low level, you do. And if you were going to pull it off, like from the crucifix half mount position, that's like you're in side control, you crucifix the arm, now you have to 2-on-1. You could theoretically still hit an Americana from that. And Blanchfield does. But Blanchfield is 19 years old. And Gabriella at the time would have been like 27 and just completely schooled, like, no big deal. But you know what? Let's give her the benefit of the doubt. She's not a grappler. She's a striker. And if someone struck with her, maybe she'd show us a better of account. But she doesn't. Her next fight against Jasmine Jasu, you know what? She's actually from just down the road. She's from Niagara. I guess it'd be like 45 minutes away, but I always struggle with that name. Jasmine Jasu Davicius. And Jasmine's very, very tall for the weight class. Like, she's very long. She's got good knees up the middle. She's a good wrestler. She stands a little flat-footed with her head up in the air. Doesn't move her feet as much as you'd like, but a pretty solid fighter nonetheless. The thing is that Jasmine likes to fight at 115 pounds. Gabriella is like, well, I'm a 125er, so they meet at a catch weight of 122, and Jasmine just blows right through her. Every time she hits Gabriella winces, turns away. She eventually puts her in a tie clinch, knees up the middle, everything lands, takes her to the ground, dominates her on the ground, just batters her, and gets a TKO stoppage minute 37 into the first round. That's the last time that Gabriella fought. It was effectively 15 months ago, and she's just signed a Bellator contract. So she's actually getting the biggest fight of her career, despite the fact that she's on a 2-fight losing streak, despite the fact that she was stopped in both those fights in the first round, despite the fact that she's looking as bad as she's ever looked, really. Why? Well, that's because of Dayana. Like, that's why you get the A side and the B side. So the Russian fighter needs another win, another highlight reel. She needs to move on, and she needs to create this persona of, like, badass Russian. Tune in on Saturday night or on Friday night or whenever the Bellator card is that week and see her like they're trying to make her must-watch TV. How do you do that? Can crushing. It's the pro wrestling type model, but it's effective. And unfortunately, Gabriella Gulfin is coming at that expense. So yeah, big favorite, but not exactly. I mean, anything can happen. It's MMA. Don't get me wrong, but this is a clear indicator there. Cody Law versus Theodore Macuka. Yeah, Theodore Macuka versus Cody Law. Cody Law's been a cash cow for us. He's been a solid go-to guy. Unfortunately, the line, everyone's caught up to it at this point. Like, when he debuted in Bellator, you never really got great lines on him, by the way, but at least he was minus 385. Solid parlay piece because you know he's not going to lose, and he's going to add value somewhere else, right? Second fight, he's a minus 900 favorite. It's like, all right, well, I guess he's parlay material, but there's no meat on the bone. And then his last fight against Garib, he's again a 9-1 favorite. And if you thought it couldn't get any worse than that, depending on the line right now, this line's pretty much sitting at right around 1,200 and as high as 2,000. That's a terrible book. You wouldn't want to be with them on Betway. So, yeah, everyone's kind of on the Cody Law side of things at this point. And yeah, it's pretty understandable. I mean, he wrestled at the University of Missouri. He was a D1 national qualifier, wasn't an All-American, but still qualified for the big tournament. Pretty solid guy. He was one of these guys that progressively got better and better all the time. He comes from a wrestling family. His younger brother also wrestled as part of the Missouri Tigers. So, yeah, very, very solid in as far as wrestling goes. But when his career is, I wouldn't say cut short, but when you leave college and it's like, oh, you know what, I'm unsatisfactory. I wasn't a D1 All-American. I wasn't a national champion. What do you do beyond that? Well, you jump into MMA. He's just done a pretty well seamless transition at this point. 5-0 as an amateur. He's now 3-0 as a professional. Trains at an American Top Team, and you do really see that he is still green, and he's very much a wrestling-based guy. He'll try to work on his striking a little bit in fights, but then he's not overly comfortable, so he'll resort back to that wrestling. And even in the wrestling, not one of these guys that can easily get the takedown, but then kind of gets a little bit lost on the ground, figuring out what he wants to set up next. He loves attacking the neck. He loves the anaconda. He loves the darce. But again, when he doesn't get that front headlock position and he's forced to settle into a guard per se, there's not huge ground and pound there. Positionally, he's fairly dominant. But this is a 3-0 fighter, so we never like paying 12-1 favorite price tags, or even the 9-1 favorite price tags that he's been getting over some of these guys. The other thing is that Kenny Champion wasn't supposed to do anything. Had a few spots here and there, survived to the third round, then got ground and pounded out like 16 seconds left in the fight. The very next fight against Nathan Garib. Again, Garib was supposed to do nothing and still gave a fairly good account of himself. So you're paying 9-1 price tag on Cody Law. You want him, clause the law, baby. Just go out there and get the win, make it effortless. You're a 9-1 favorite. You don't want them going to decision. You don't want them struggling in a few spots. Is he improving? Yes. Is he getting better? Yes. Is he a member of the greatest team in the world, and surely at his age and his base, is he going to make a lot of improvements? All yes. But it's like buyers beware. Like these young guys will get upset here and there, and that's what you got to look at. So why isn't Theodore Macuka going to be that guy? Why is Bellator giving you a 385, a 9-1, a 9-1, and now a 12-1? Like why? What's so bad about him? But again, it comes down to style clashes. So Macuka is born in the U.S., but he's actually raised in Greece, and he's a Taekwondo guy. He's won like a few regional tournaments in Taekwondo in Greece. He's come back stateside. And again, that's his base. He's a striker. He doesn't really seem to have much else to fall in. As an amateur, he went 1-0. It does show a win by triangle choke. Great. But the indication of it was a triangle choke means he ended up on his back. I can't find footage from it, but obviously it wasn't a topside triangle. So, yeah, I would reckon his takedown defense probably wasn't that good. Did he throw up a triangle on Joseph Menchie? Yeah, he did. Is he going to throw up a triangle on Cody Law when he gives up the takedown? No, absolutely not. And then after that, he defeats an 0-0 opponent on an event that's not labeled. Nobody knows where the event happened, but they do know that he apparently beat a guy, and it was by a first-round TKO. Again, that doesn't surprise me. And look for him to come out there and probably, feel somewhat comfortable striking and maybe throw a couple flashy kicks here and there. But as soon as he lifts that leg up, or as soon as he spins to turn up his back, I would imagine Cody Law is going to plow him to the ground. Now, again, this is MMA. Throwing up that leg, why could he not land some spinning back kick? Why? Because it's just so low percentage. So if you're like one of these guys that'll back any underdog, big underdogs, you like big underdogs because they're just small little sprinkle punt plays, then yeah, you got a big underdog here. And does he have a puncher's chance? But yeah, he's a striker, and this is a sport where a lot of guys that have no otherwise chance of winning do have that puncher's chance. But yeah, I got to go with Cody Law to keep rolling them up here. And he's going to need probably to look better than he has been looking just because such a big favorite. And you want to give the impression to Bellator brass that you're moving up, you're getting better, you're improving, and then they're going to start giving you some tougher opponents. I just don't know that he's fully ready for tougher opponents yet. And when you give him guys like this, I don't know that it does anything to build him up. So what I can leave you with is that he faces on a day-to-day basis in training camp much better guys than he would face here in Macuka. And I expect, on his wrestling alone should be able to win. But, adding those other wrinkles at ATT surely would make him, a likable play. We got Ronny Marcus versus Saeed Sowma. Ronny Marcus is the plus 154 favorite. Saeed Sowma 188, 2-1 in some spots. Yeah, this is one, again, if you were going to take an underdog, like I suppose Ronny Marcus does have a path of victory, and he's a guy that could theoretically pull one off, but my plan was to fade his ass with Saeed Sowma, and then when I saw the minus 188 to 200 price tag, it's like that kind of scared me off a little bit. So we'll start over with Ronny Marcus and why he might be a viable underdog play. Like, at his best, when he was fighting in the UFC back in the day at 185 pounds, it was like he was supposed to be a legitimate prospect. He just fanned out. He couldn't make weight. He would routinely miss weight, come in at like 188 pounds, 190 pounds, body not in great shape, and start giving him bad accounts of himself. He would travel the world and fight some decent guys, and like when he does show up, hasn't got a bad game to him. When he doesn't show up, which is also half the time, he loses. But they're good guys, Victor Nemkov, solid. Sean O'Connell, even though I don't think he's solid, he won $1 million in the PFL tournament. Brandon Halsey, guy, former Bellator champion, powerhouse wrestler, big thick dude. Linton Vassell, former Bellator champion. So at least we can excuse that his losses are to higher level guys, right? Even in some of those wins, decent level guys. But beyond that, it's like now he fights at heavyweight. And so he's not a middleweight anymore, which he was most effective. He's not a light heavyweight anymore, in which at least he was still taking it seriously. He's a big old thick heavyweight. I just don't know that I can back him being that size. He was originally booked to Bellator to fight Josh Barnett, makes weight, looks soft on the scales, doesn't matter, makes weight, and like day of the fight, Josh Barnett is ill, yank it. So he doesn't get to fight effectively, right? Now they rebook him versus Josh Barnett, and it's like leading up, close to getting close to the fight, and Josh Barnett pops, he popped for steroids. Okay, but fights pull it off again. Then he draws Matt Mitrione, but then the event's canceled due to COVID. So he sat around for a while before he came in and made that Linton Vassell fight. And the Vassell fight, he starts off well enough. I mean, he crashes forward, he closes the distance. He doesn't give Linton Vassell any time to set up that reach on the outside, presses him up against the cage. But the takedowns were awful, man, just botched. He just pulled Linton Vassell right on top of him and then proceeded to get dominated in the first after he did so. And then the second, more of the same, only this time when Linton was on him, he tired out, got TKO'd. Terrible account of himself. Not a natural heavyweight. But at the very least, he has that experience, right? Now, he's a BJJ black belt. And on top of that, when you look at any of his stuff on social media, he's been managed by Ali Abdelaziz for quite some time. That's kind of why he was in those PFL tournaments. Now he's with Bellator. He's still at Extreme Couture. And when you look at the room he's in, one, he does physically appear to be in pretty good shape. But two, he's routinely grinding it in there with Khamzat Chimaev, what's his name? Alexander Gustafsson, who's now a heavyweight himself, is grinding in the room. Sean Strickland's been grinding in the room. There's been a lot of good bodies. Francis Ngannou, who's obviously heavyweight at the gym. But more so than that, he's been working with Chimaev and Gustafsson, and he looks to be in pretty good shape. He's also been spending a lot of time at Drysdale Jiu-Jitsu Gym in Las Vegas, and probably adding a lot of wrinkles, maybe not adding wrinkles to his game, but just keeping himself sharp. He could potentially be one of those dangerous guys that goes in there, pulls you on top of him, but ends up on top of that takedown, holds you down, greases you out a couple rounds, and now all of a sudden you've lost. I guess that's the buyer's beware. With Sowma, it's not that he's bad, it's that he's super green still. I mean, he loses his debut against Steve Mowry, who is very green even now, but especially back in those days, he was extremely green. The wins are kind of fairly low level. I suppose the biggest one being Bobby Brent's, but Bobby Brent's is a boxer, man. He's not going to take leg kicks, and that's how Sowma beat him. And then when he fought Tyrell Fortune, it's not a very good fight. He loses the first 2 rounds. You can make an argument maybe he stole the second round at the end. The judges didn't agree, and he loses the decision. He's now been on the sidelines for, coming up on a year. He's not, his biggest win's Bobby Brent's. His biggest fight overall, I guess, would be Tyrell Fortune and Steve Mowry in his debut. Is this guy a 2-1 favorite? Do we like him? He is out of American Top Team. Cool, but are we just randomly going to bet guys from ATT just because it's ATT? They've got hundreds of guys in the gym. Some of them are not going to be great. Some of them are going to be fodder. And in his case, he gets in a lot of work with the heavyweights there, but he's not a very big heavyweight. In fact, he only stands 5'11". He's a smaller guy. So he probably should be a 205er. But instead, he comes in, weighs about 240 pounds, and does the damn thing. He is difficult to take down, though. That will be the key, is that when you watch the Tyrell Fortune fight, Fortune's supposed to be, big collegiate wrestler, big, strong, natural heavyweight, good athletic guy, going to take him down. In the first round, he doesn't really even try to take him down. In the second round, it looks like Sowma's takedown defense checks out pretty good. And the third round, Sowma's still there. Cardio's still in check. Dude's the Titan FC heavyweight champion, right? So, he's preparing for these 5-round fights over there. Cardio seemed pretty good. For being a smaller heavyweight, that's going to give you probably some better gas in the tank, and also he's a lot more mobile. He just had such a slow start with Fortune. Fortune's very green in the striking department, and yet the first round he gives it up to him, kind of more or less on the basis of just getting outworked. In the second round, he's getting controlled, he's getting out-grappled. He loses the first 3.5 minutes of the round, and then 90 seconds left comes alive. Third round's all his. But again, that's the worry, and maybe is this guy going to be the guy that shits the apple pie? If he gets a slow start to Ronny Marquez, and Ronny Marquez is a fast starter versus a slow starter inside Sowma. If he banks up a round, if he banks up 2 rounds, I'm in a lot of trouble. But again, truthfully, hate to back another favorite here. Cardio is king, and with Ronny Marquez, even if he looks like he's on shape online, he doesn't have a good gas tank. He never really has. And with Sowma, he kind of appears to at least be able to fight 3 rounds. His takedown defense is good enough that he should be able to keep Marquez in an upright position. And then as far as the striking goes, yeah, he's got those leg kicks. He's maybe a little heavier handed. He's definitely got better durability. So maybe Sowma edges this one out. But again, he will be probably one of these lower end guys on the ticket, just because I fully recognize that Marcus is a live underdog. It's just he's got such a poor track record and history. I wouldn't really feel personally comfortable backing him up here. Mattos versus CJ Hamilton. Again, you got a 3-1 pick here on Mattos. And this one's probably a lot more warranted. Did they? Yeah. Oh, okay. They got this as a main card fight. Yeah. Okay. I didn't have to talk about that one first. I suppose I'm out of order. We'll go Johnny Eblen versus Travis Davis. Johnny Eblen, again, he's another guy that Bellator is looking to build up. He's 8-0. He's undefeated, and for good reason. Guy's a pretty solid wrestler. Yeah, they call him the Korean Canelo or Diamond Hands. He shows a lot of decisions, however. He's not necessarily that guy that's going to go out there and just knock you out. But yeah, solid guy. Well, I actually screwed up and just realizing that right now is that Cody Law actually wrestled in Pittsburgh. This is the guy that wrestled out of the Missouri Tigers in Missouri. His brother was also on the team. Regardless, you've got some standout wrestlers. One of them's a 12-1 favorite. This one is actually a much more bettable price. And I really do like what I see out of Johnny Eblen. I mean, he's very strong. He's a very physical guy, has a good, solid wrestling pedigree. But as far as his transition to mixed martial arts goes, it's there. I mean, if he wants to take you down, he's got the option that he can use that in his back pocket. He's improving his striking a lot more, but physically very strong guy and very good cardio. So when they matched him up against Taylor Johnson at Bellator 250, We know with Taylor Johnson, the dude is a collegiate wrestler. He wrestled at the University of Oregon, a very solid wrestling program. The guy is extremely physically strong and has solid grappling. And yet when he matched up against Eblen, it was a test of wills early. Both guys had a little bit of success, reversing position up against the cage. But Eblen wore on him. He was stronger than him. He was bigger than him. His wrestling was better. His cardio was better. His durability was solid. That night it was like, and I had him, and I think that was a 50-50 pick. Let me just bring up the odds really quick. It was plus 110 Johnny Eblen. I think he was my only underdog that I really liked on the card, and he came through and he looked solid doing that. Right then and there, it's like this guy's going to grow within the promotion and be pretty solid. His next time out against Daniel Madrid, he's a 450 favorite. So again, people have realized the guy can wrestle, the guy's got cardio, he's got durability, he's got striking, he's kind of got all those factors that's going to go and make a well-rounded martial artist that's going to win at this level. And now you're getting the same thing. I mean, he comes in again. He's a 4-1 favorite, 5-1 favorite. But he just seems like he's probably one of the safer guys on the card. And you don't have to pay a 9-1 price tag like Dayana. You don't have to pay a 12-1 price tag like Cody Law. This one's a little bit better. Now, Travis Davis is credible. He's 10-4. The guy can clearly pack a punch. He's got some decent knockouts. He's also 5-0 as a professional boxer. But therein lies the issue with him. So the 5-0 as a pro boxer is not as impressive as it sounds. A lot of low-level guys on the resume. So he's kind of more or less padded himself up. In fact, won a couple split decisions in those low-level boxing matches. But the fact that you are dabbling in pro boxing parallel with your mixed martial arts career, he's a striker. He's a striker. He doesn't mind boxing because that's probably his base, and that's where he feels most comfortable. When you look at his MMA record, TKO due to strikes, TKO due to strikes, TKO due to strikes, TKO due to injury, doctor stoppage, couple splits. Does he have a submission game? Sure, against the really low-level guys, but he prefers to be boxing in there. He prefers to be letting his hands go. I think Eblen will be able to just time these takedowns whenever he wants, be too physically strong for him, get him on the ground, work him over. Again, when you have an undefeated prospect, there is always that little bit of risk of like someone's going to expose them, and no one's pointed out what the problem is yet, but there's always a problem. Someone's just got to figure it out. Is this guy the guy to figure it out? Potentially, but I think more often than not, he's going to be getting grinded for long periods of time up against the cage on the ground. I just don't see this one going overly good for him. So Eblen, big favorite again, but one that should be warranted. We've got Arlene Blencowe versus Dayana Silva. Again, you're going to have a pretty sizable enough favorite in Arlene Blencowe, although probably a little bit more playable. Yeah, minus 154 against Dayana Silva. Dayana Silva's tough. I'll give her that first and foremost. Dayana Silva's somebody that comes. She usually fights the best that they have to offer. She usually is on the losing end of that, but she's tough and she's durable. When you look at her record, she's alternated wins and losses over the last 6 years. She's 3 wins and 4 losses over the last 6 years. And again, has never won back-to-back, but has never lost back-to-back. The interesting thing, though, the losses are Jennifer Maia, majority decision. That's pretty dope. One judge thought it was a draw, and it's Jennifer Maia. This Giselle Moreira is fairly legit enough in Brazil, and it's a split decision. The fight was on Contender Series. She loses a split. Mariana Moraes, you see her in PFL right now. She just picked up a decent win over Caitlin Young. Has jobbed out to some of the best girls. And again, it's a split decision. And then she fights Julia Budd in a title fight. And wouldn't you know it? It's a split decision. So it's like she's always competitive and she's durable. Knocking her out is not – it wasn't a title fight. Sorry, it was just a regular 3-round affair. But knocking her out is going to be a massive task. Submitting her seems to be a massive task. She's a girl that'll go in there and will give you 15 hard minutes. But is she a little bit flat-footed? Yes. Is she a little bit slow? Yes. Is she a little bit predictable? Yes. She's got the toughness, sure, but the rest of the skills aren't quite matching up to this point. So she's able to go out there and beat the lower echelon. And whenever they match her up against higher echelon fighters, she's competitive, but she's almost always coming up on the wrong side of it. Arlene Blencowe's 38 years old. She's definitely getting older, but this is someone who's gone above and beyond to prove a lot of doubters wrong in Bellator. She's full-time at Greg Jackson's camp in New Mexico, and she's one of the lead training partners, as she has been one of the lead training partners for Holly Holm for the last couple of years now. She appears to be in good shape. She's a 4-5 pro boxer, but the way women's boxing works is that she's technically a former world champion in the sport of boxing despite a losing record and only 4 wins overall. Couldn't tell you that much, but striking is where she's most competent. And again, when you look at her losses, she's able to go out there and keep these fights close. Majority decision loss to Julia Budd in the first fight. Split decision loss to Julia Budd in the second fight. Split decision win over John Kavanaugh's sister, Sinead Kavanagh. Wins over Leslie Smith, Amanda Bell, Amber Laybrock, all 3 of which are strikers. And you're seeing when it's the striker versus Blencowe, Blencowe's able to go out there and prevail. Last time out against Chris Cyborg, well, shit, it's Chris Cyborg. And how did Cyborg get the job done? Took her down. Got the submission with the rear naked choke. So no doubt about it, Blencowe is limited in her own way. And no doubt about it, we wouldn't want to go heavy on Blencowe. But as a minus 154 pick, this will juice up the PRPs of the world. This will juice up some of those tickets because what are we going to do? Just put the 9-to-1s and the 12-to-1s together? We're still going to get a bad value on that. Blencowe should be able to go out there and get the job done. She needs to keep this fight striking, which I think that Dayana Silva is going to give her exactly that. And if she's able to do so, she should be able to land the slightly better shots. The only other concern there is that Silva is very durable. Blencowe's cardio has come into question a few times in the past. If she's able to extend her late, we've got a problem. My saving grace there, I believe, is that Blencowe banks those first 2 rounds before she gets tired. And then by the time Silva, pressures her a little bit, just not enough to get the finish. She's more of a decision girl herself. So hopefully that one goes our way. And then, yeah, minus 154, what can you do? Now we got Mattos versus CJ Hamilton. Mattos coming in as a 3-to-1 favorite. Come back on CJ Hamilton, that like plus 200 range. Yeah, rightfully so. Should be Mattos. The guy's always in incredible shape. He always shows up, looked up, just like he's extremely taking his training extremely seriously. He's got just an excellent physique on him, but he's starting to put the skills together as well. When he's on the Ultimate Fighter way back in the day, that would have been 2015. He won his debut fight over Jose Marcos to get into the house. To be a member of the cast, and then he loses to Reginaldo Vieira by decision. But Reginaldo Vieira, interestingly enough, did win that season of the Ultimate Fighter as a comeback replacement. So losing to the eventual champion, no big deal. UFC does not give him a contract. They don't bring him back in the fold. So it goes back to Brazil. And in Brazil, the guy's untouchable. He's very solid. He's got an advanced skill set for the regional scene he's fighting on, and the guy's in very good shape. He's also a member of the Pitbull brothers with both Patricio and Patricky, and you see the improvements a lot of these guys are going. When they're in Brazil, they hustle hard. When they come stateside, they go to Fight Ready in Arizona. And again, they're adding all these different elements to their game and improving a lot very quickly. So he gets picked up by ACA. It was ACB at the time. It's ACA now. Over in Russia, and they don't give him an easy task right off the get-go, Magomed Gizanov, but he has a good account of himself, man. He's very difficult to take down. He's a strong, plodding guy. He comes forward. His striking is a little bit loopy. It's a little bit stiff, but he's powerful, and that's why he gets away with it, is that he's able to be the aggressor, come forward, back you up, throw those hooks, keep you honest, back you up against the cage. I'd like to see him wrestle a little bit more, because I'm sure of this. With his build and the fact that he is a grappler at heart, when he ends up on top, that's where he's going to be able to have the most success. The problem there is that it's not all that entertaining. And he's a Pitbull brother, He's gonna try to get out there and try to make this as exciting as he possibly can. So is ring IQ the best? Maybe not, but he's still fighting at an elite level. So anyways, he beats Gizanov. So it's like, okay, we need to get one back for Team Russia. So he fights Peter Yan. Makes it to the 3rd round against Peter Yan. Ass kicked the entire time, but made it to the 3rd round with the bar none best 135-pound fighter on the planet. That's dope. Bounces back, beating another tough Russian with a majority decision in Nagashiko Galiev or Nashklo Galiev. Anyways, split decision win. I'm having a lot of trouble pronouncing names on this show, probably just because most of them are like these foreign Russian fighters, and quite honestly, I've been able to practice my enunciation on these names for 20 minutes before I hit record. But anyways, the Galiev fight, again, it's a lot of backing him up, stuffing the takedowns, making him work. You get a majority decision in Russia. That means something because they're not above giving you a bum decision in Russia. And then he rebounds it by fighting Magomedov in Bellator. It's his Bellator debut. Now, Magomedov is 17-1. He's an absolute tyrant. He's a very, very bad dude. He is also the only man to defeat Peter Yan cleanly. I suppose Aljamain's got a DQ win over him. He's the only man to defeat Peter Yan, and then he actually lost the rematch to Peter Yan, so he's fought twice with him. One of them was fight of the year, as far as I'm concerned, one of the best fights I've ever seen. This guy's the real deal. He's as legit as it comes. And for Mattos, he's the expense of, we just spent a lot of money signing this Russian prospect. We need him to debut against somebody. Unfortunately, Mattos is that guy. And whereas he does get beat up, the first 2 minutes of the fight, he almost snagged up a bulldog choke. It's kind of like a rear naked choke, but he had no hooks in. And then after that, he fairly gets dominated in the grappling positions, but fights hard all the way through. Cardio didn't seem all that bad. Had the desire to win. Continuously kept working to get up. Was just outskilled. Coming in against CJ Hamilton, he should have a lot more success. And keep in mind that he fought Magomedov, and then they booked him to take on Brett Johns, another high-level UFC signing coming over solid guy. They need him to get his feet wet. So they're booking him against the best guys available to him. That fight unfortunately falls through. And then, yeah, great. Now he gets CJ Hamilton. This should be a much better, version of him. So CJ Hamilton, unfortunately, had to fight Magomedov his last time out as well, but just got trucked right through. Like, good looked okay in the first round. Obviously, takedown defense wasn't there, but in the second round, once he got taken down, gets grinded up, gets submitted. He's had a long, illustrious career on the regional scene. He's fought in a lot of notable enough guys. He fought Jared Brooks, UFC veteran. He's got, which was a total strange decision. He fought Casey Kinney, UFC veteran. He's got a win over Ryan Hollis, who was kind of like a Texas regional show guy that fought a lot of UFC veterans. Jordan Espinoza, he lost that fight, UFC veteran. He fought Jimmy Flick, he lost that fight. There's a UFC veteran. And so that's kind of the repetitive theme here, is that he's got a lot of wins over lower end regional scene guys. And whenever he's stepped up and fought those UFC veterans, 0-4 against them, lost the fight against Magomedov, lost the fight against Varen Webb, like just those times that he's had to step up, he's lost. As an amateur, he fought Justin Scoggins, another UFC veteran, but again, he lost, right? So that's kind of been the knock on CJ Hamilton. He can kind of do it all. He can grapple a little bit. He can strike a little bit. He's obviously got a good amount of experience. He's a willing participant. He's one of those guys that is sneaky. He's also got a decently sneaky enough submission game. So maybe that would be his path to victory, is maybe hunt the neck, snatch something up in transition. But with Mattos, it's like, good luck, good luck. Taking him down is going to be a hell of a problem. Submitting him would be a hell of a problem. And beyond that, he's just going to come forward, back you up, get you up against the cage, land the more eye-catching shots, maybe mix in a takedown or two, but mostly just physically dictate the range, have the more presence. And judges like that. If neither guy does anything, but one guy's moving forward, and they say it all the time, body language. Oh, well, this guy's kind of backpedaling and just doesn't look into it. The other guy's coming forward. It's like, well, what does that mean, right? Did the one guy land 3 jabs off his back foot? The other guy's just moving forward. Oh, he did? So why didn't the guy have his back foot win? Well, he's backing up. The other guy was controlling the center of the octagon. Is that a real thing? I don't know. But judges believe it, It's something that you routinely see. The guy moving forward gets the victory. In Mattos' case, I think he's going to spend a decent amount of time moving forward on CJ Hamilton. And again, I think he just has the overall superior skill set. Whereas maybe puncher's chance, like who? Peter Yan? And that wasn't a puncher's chance. He beat the crap out of him for 3 rounds almost before putting away. So he really did have to earn that one. I would say Matheus has got him outgunned. Tyrell Fortune versus Matt Mitrione at the co-main event. You got the Tyrell Fortune line at -370 versus the comeback on Matt Mitrione at +270. And so on one hand, Bellator knows exactly what they're doing. The lines maker knows exactly what they're doing. Everybody's kind of in on it. You've got Tyrell Fortune, a guy that is a solid enough wrestler. That is his base. That is his pedigree. That's where he feels most comfortable. Taking a guy in Matt Mitrione who just, my God, does he struggle mightily to stuff a single takedown. It's amazing. This guy's been working with guys like Tom Erickson for well over a decade, and yet no improvements. And then eventually he says, you know what, I got to get to Indiana. I got to leave Indiana. I got to go to greener pastures. So he goes over to Minnesota and worked with a bunch of good wrestlers there. Never got any better. Then he goes out to Florida. He's working at Sanford MMA. Never got any better. And so the way to beat Matt Mitrione is there. It's always been there, and it continues to be there, is go in, lift him onto one leg. He hates single legs, right? As soon as you lift one leg up, he seemingly has no balance. He topples to the floor. He's 43 years old. He's flirted with the idea of retirement. He's gone on record saying, he's taken a lot of damage both in his professional NFL career as well as his fighting career. He's currently on a 3-fight losing streak, and it's always the same thing, dude. Keep in mind his last win, Roy Nelson, 3 years ago. Majority decision. He couldn't wrestle then. Ryan Bader's a 205er. My God, Ryan Bader made it look out of place. But then Sergey Haratonov, Sergey Haratonov knocks him out, beats him up standing, backs him up. Mitrione looked tired in that fight. He looked old in that fight. His ability to sustain damage appeared to be kind of gone in that fight. He just didn't look himself. And then he gets the Tim Johnson fight. He starts off kind of well against Tim Johnson. The second Timmy decided to commit to the takedown, the second Timmy was able to wrangle him to the ground, it's all over soon time after that. So Matt Mitrione's got a clear problem there, and Tyrell Fortune's supposed to be that guy. But this one very, very, very well may be a trap line because, yeah, we've got 43 Matt Mitrione. He's lost his last 3. They were, most of the time he's getting exposed in the wrestling, so it's easy to write him off. Tyrell Fortune, geez, he's 10-1. He's looking good. He's getting better. He's only 31 years old. They're spending time on this guy. Here's where I think it's trap line, right? So he spent a lot of time in Bellator. Bellator signed him exclusively right from the get-go. Bellator 163, his debut. He fought for them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 consecutive times, fighting nobody. They built him up. They built him up on probably a false pretense of this guy's an undefeated heavyweight, just grind machine. It's like, no, he's still green. You haven't proved it yet, though. And then they made the mistake by giving him Tim Johnson. I'll never forget, because Paul Shaughnessy told me it was a trap line right then. And I was like, no, they're trying to build him up. But he came in as a 8-1 favorite over Tim Johnson. Yes, the same Tim Johnson that fought in the UFC and had some decent success. The same Tim Johnson that literally just went the distance with Moldavsky for the heavyweight title. That Tim Johnson, Fortune's an 8-1 favorite. Why was he an 8-1 favorite over a much more credited guy that, by the way, was a member of the University of Minnesota, wrestled collegiately, not a fish out of water in this matchup. Why was he an 8-1 favorite? Because, again, Bellator did such a good job of building this undefeated narrative that there's an aura there. The fight starts. He doesn't even shoot a takedown on Tim, probably because he realizes Tim's going to – I don't know. I don't even know why he didn't even attempt the takedown. He stood in front of him. He worked on his striking for a little bit. And the second Tim blasted him with a right uppercut, he crumpled up pretty hard. He loses, 8-1 favorite, back to the drawing board. Against Jack May. He looked awful against Jack May, and then he low blows him. Okay, no contest. And then he gets Said Sowma, who we talked about earlier. Now, if you watch back the Sowma fight, he has no success with his wrestling against Sowma. He's not really able to take him down and do anything with it. And so a lot of people complained. The judges didn't. The 2 media members that scored on MMA decisions didn't. But a lot of people complained that they thought Sowma won. They thought Sowma won on the basis of he did enough to steal back the second round at the end of it and had cleanly won the third round. Their argument's not wrong because 2 of the 3 judges that scored the fight for Tyrell Fortune gave Tyrell Fortune the third round and Said Sowma the second. It wouldn't make any sense. In what world would that make sense? So he actually didn't look good there at all. And then they rebook him against Jack May, who's 40 years old, who's 6'7", and who also cannot wrestle. And so he takes him down and he pounds him out. But they've rebuilt this aura again. Like, oh, bad shit. Back on a winning streak. Guy's a serious problem. I'm not fully convinced. I don't think he can take a punch all that well. I think his wrestling is highly overrated. Is his wrestling good enough to go and take Matt Mitrione down and beat up Matt Mitrione? Yeah. Very, very possible. But if he gets intercepted on the way in or Matt Mitrione's able to even stuff 1 or 2 of these, could be a dicey situation, could be a lot of problems. The longer this thing goes, definitely Fortune, because he's got a much better gas tank, and Matt Mitrione's more of a 1-round guy. But if Mitrione was able to spring this the upset, it would be by that first-round knockout by catching him. Bellator's not really one to offer like live betting opportunities. However, if you did have a book that would offer it, if the fight gets out of that first round, then yeah, I would hammer back on Fortune. But as far as a pre-fight bet goes, we've got a 3-1 favorite, a guy that's blown a big ticket already, a guy that hasn't really fought all that good level of opposition yet and hasn't really looked all that good doing it. It almost feels like, again, it could potentially be a trap line, and I don't want to be falling into that trap. So a little bit of buyers beware there, certainly. And then in the main event, we got Juliana Velasquez taking on Denise Kieholtz. Again, what do you want to know? They got another big favorite in Juliana Velasquez coming in at -340, comeback on Denise Kieholtz +260. You can also get her 240, whatever. It depends on the line, of course. But, yeah, this is just another stylistic clash. I mean, Juliana Velasquez is legit. She's a high-level judo black belt. She's had a lot of success competing internationally. As far as her judo career goes, very accredited, very solid. So now she comes over to MMA. And I guess when you get these high-level judo practitioners like a Ronda Rousey, when they come, or I guess like a Kayla Harrison's a good example as well, when they come over and they fight girls that have just started training mixed martial arts the last few years, they are going to run shop over them. And very much she's able to do that. Only she's not one of these, I'm just going to fight low level forever. She realizes how good she is, and she's looking to push herself. Her second pro fight is against a Talita Bernardo, UFC veteran, right? She beats Rosie Duarte's 3-0 fighter taking on an 8-3 opponent. Elaine Albuquerque, very solid veteran of the Brazilian regional scene that had 15 pro fights at the time. They bring her into Bellator, where she picked up wins over Rebecca Ruth, Alejandra Lara, Christine Williams, Bruno Ellen. That was the basis of Bellator's division. Those were all the girls that Bellator at some point thought maybe we can build them up. Rebecca Ruth had that huge upset. Christina Williams had the huge upset. Those are actually decent enough fighters. Bruno Ellen never panned out all that well, but somebody with a legitimate skill set. They throw her into a title fight with the GOAT, Ilya McFarlane. McFarlane is undefeated, 11-0. She's an absolute beast. She's someone that's competing in grappling tournaments against high-level grapplers now and having decent amount of success. She's solid. She's legit. And I could not figure out why Juliana Velasquez was a minus 185 favorite over McFarland. I just couldn't figure it out. In what world, just your undefeated GOAT champion, someone Bellator spent a lot of time putting money into, is a 2-1 underdog to this girl that's beat Bruna Ellen, Christina Williams, Rebecca Ruth, Alejandra Lara? Like, good for the Bellator level, but like in the grand scheme of things, like, what's going on here? Couldn't have been more wrong there, man. Again, I'm glad I didn't put a ton of investment into it, but the lines maker and whoever steamed the line in that direction was 100% spot on the money. This girl's extremely difficult to deal with. She gets you to the ground, and once you are on the ground, you're getting routinely out-grappled. Her striking's improving, getting better, but she's durable enough and she has enough cardio to just make this a bad situation for you. A lot of the time she is fighting to a decision. However, she can't put you away. She does have some decent ground and pound. She does have some decent submissions. But it's the ability to just neutralize somebody over the course of 25 minutes that's key. She went 5 rounds with Elia McFarland. That's huge. Being able to go 25 minutes with accredited champion. Being able to go 25 minutes for the first time in your career and looking good doing so. Now you draw Denise Kieholtz. Well, what area is she going to pose you problems in? And that's the problem. Denise Kieholtz is accredited striker. She is a accredited Dutch-style Muay Thai practitioner. She has a good stand-up record, and she fought a lot in Bellator's kickboxing league. Bellator signed her, in fact, not as an MMA fighter, but to be a kickboxer. They had Bellator kickboxing. It didn't really take off. It didn't really do all that well. But Denise Kieholtz was one of their go-tos. And I think she had like a 6-2 record with them. At some point, kickboxing is not really paying the bills, and Bellator kickboxing is kind of going away. Glory's not really having any shows. There's no money in kickboxing. Why not try MMA? So she does. She beat Jessica Middleton. And she beats a 3-2 opponent. Bring Tyrell 4-3. They give her an 0-0 opponent after that. She beats Christina Williams. She beat Kate Jackson. She's improving. You can see that she's adding the wrinkles of her grappling into her game, but it's too little too late. I just don't think her grappling has been able to progress to a level that she's going to go out there and take on Juliana Velasquez. The takedown should come relatively easy. The top control should be there all night from Velasquez. Whereas puncher's chance is a real thing, and we have discussed a lot of these underdogs. Best path is going to be just clipping them, landing that lucky shot, so to speak. But in this case, it's women's MMA, and she's pretty durable herself. So, like, what are you going to catch her with? A knee up the middle? That would be your best bet. Beyond that, it could be a very, very rough night. So I'm a Velasquez believer now, and I don't think that it was just a one-and-done fluke over Elia McFarland, because it wasn't like she was the underdog. She won that fight, and it was like, oh, everybody believe her now. She sprung the upset. They knew. People knew. Matchmaker knew. The odds maker, sorry. Matchmaker probably didn't know, but they were on her right away, just on advanced skill set. And now she's got a stylistical clash that she's really going to be able to optimize that advanced skill set in. So it should be favored all day. So anyways, what did I do here today? I just sat here and I basically told you all the favorites are going to win. So let's try to put a little quick parlay together. Like, who do we like the more? You would think that Juliana Velasquez is going to have to be a top ticket for 2 reasons. One, she's the champ. She's a little more solid. She's proven. She's durable. She's got the stylistical clash in her favor. And beyond all that, she's the main event. So if we can put a solid 2 to 3 fight ticket together and make it to the main event, we'll have a hedge option. Kind of what screwed us on that whole Wonder Boy fiasco from last weekend is that he's the co-main, right? So I need him to win, then Poirier. If it was flipped for whatever reason, right? If it was flipped for whatever reason and Poirier wins over McGregor first, and now there's only 1 fight left, well, I know if Thompson wins, I'm going to make $10,000. If Thompson loses, I'm going to lose $300. Well, what do? You hedge out. You hedge out, easy hedge out. But you got to make it to the main event. So by putting Velasquez on this top ticket, at least by the end of the night, if everything else is intact, we'll have drawn a ability to at least just cash out, whatever, lick our wounds, move on to the next. So, okay, so who do we like that's going to pair up with her? So, personally, I'm saying Johnny Eblen. I really like Johnny Eblen. Cody Law, I mean, he's 12-1, but what you going to do? And I suppose you would go with Dayana. So, you've got your 3 biggest favorites on the card, and you've got to match it up a little bit. Putting that Velasquez 340, depending on your book, you can get this thing close to even. Minus 120 at the absolute worst. Really not all that bad. That would be like the basis of that top ticket. Moving to that second ticket, I'm tempted to go Blencowe, but I don't want to have her all the way up. So we're going to go Mattos, who I think should have a lot more success. And we're going to go with, where are they? Yeah, actually, to be honest, that's when things get dicey. So I guess if we were just making one on the show right now, I'd probably go Mattos, and I would probably go for the second selection there to be. Yeah, I'm not even super comfortable with that. You know what? Those 5 right there plus 142. Check on Twitter. I will actually put out the official stuff. I guess the problem that we're running into is that we can throw Arlene Blencowe, right? That moves us to 3-1, right? The ticket below that, though, you've got Johnny Soto. I think will use that grappling to win that stylistic clash over Adil. And you got Charlie Campbell as a 330 favorite. Yeah, I'd definitely put Charlie Campbell. And that gives you a last play of nobody. It's a 10-fight card. It's a 10-fight card. There's really not a whole lot of meat on the bone there. As far as potential people that are going to shit in the apple pies, Charlie Campbell could potentially do it. Tyrell Fortune, I'll put him on. So the whole parlay would read Juliana Velasquez. Your PRP would be Juliana Velasquez, Johnny Eblen, Cody Law, Dayana, Avsaragova, Mattos, Arlene Blencowe, Johnny Soto, Charlie Campbell, Tyrell Fortune. It pays 10-1. So if all 10 fighters hit, we did a cash at 10-1. The feeling there is that either Fortune gets caught, Charlie Campbell gets grinded down for 2 rounds, Johnny Soto just had one big performance and maybe he's not that good. Arlene Blencowe's 38 years old. The rest of them should be on the safer side. We would create a hedge out at the end in case something went wiry in the main event. But this card as a straight up, not a huge money maker. What I do like about it is there's certain key pieces here that we might be able to also include on some Bellator or some UFC stuff on Saturday to try to juice those lines. So anyways, it's breaking down the Bs for a reason. They want these guys, it's the B League, sorry, let's be real here. And half of the fighters are very much B League, maybe even some cases C League fighters. The other half are also B League fighters. Bellator is hoping that they'll grow and improve and beat A-level guys. But looking on this card, outside of Juliana Velasquez, there's no A-level fighters on this card. Matt Mitrione may have been considered one at some point in his career, but as a 43-year-old, he's not. Tyrell Fortune is a fraud. Denise Kieholtz is a one-dimensional kickboxer. Arlene Blencowe's 38. Dayana Silva's 3-4 over the last 6 years. Johnny Eblen's still so young in his career. Travis Clay's a boxer who I think is going to be overwhelmed here. CJ Hamilton's a journeyman. Mattos really got no knock on him, to be honest with you, but he hasn't quite gotten that marquee victory that makes him, an A-level fighter yet. Ronny Marquez has been a bum pretty much his entire career. Sowma is still is very young. Cody Law's got improving to do. Theodore Macuka, I don't think that one's going to go good for him. Gabriella Gulfin, that's the key that you could run into. However, I love B League promotions. I love these more unknown fighters because, again, there's a clear narrative here, and you can look at the tape and be like, oh, this guy doesn't know how to do this. Whereas when you look at the UFC, it's supposed to be the premier fighters in the world. Most of them are a little more well-rounded. So hopefully we can make Bellator 264, a profitable one. And that would, increase the bankroll so we can take maybe some shots that we wouldn't otherwise take on that UFC card. But I think the smart play for this weekend is to keep it small, keep it simple. You can parlay some of these Bellator guys with some of the UFC guys, the ones that you feel absolutely most comfortable with, but no need to stretch things or force any plays this weekend. Hopefully you learned something on this week's episode of Breaking Down the Bees, Bellator 264. And good luck. Good luck, and let's get at it this weekend.